as they also say, our parents, teen impulses, and understanding why teenagers make certain mistakes and also giving appropriate consequences. Talk to us, take us through that.
Yeah, so we're just coming off from the festive season, and a lot has been happening. This is a period of fun, and a lot can actually happen in the name of fun. Sometimes teens end up doing things that they regret afterwards, and all as a result of the adrenaline rush. And it's not only teens, even adults also. Sometimes you hear stories of weird things that happen just because people are having fun and people are in this ecstatic mode. So I thought it would be an appropriate time to discuss about this, because even yesterday and the day before, I was hearing a lot of stories of things that happened in the life of teenagers, and parents couldn't understand how it happened and how they could help their teenagers. So I'll first of all give examples of the mistakes, the major mistakes that teenagers can make, especially around the festive season because of fun. So sometimes this is the time when teenagers start experimenting with drugs, so drinking for the first time or trying out drugs. It could be weed or any other drug, trying it for the first time. And then there's also the hookup culture, so hooking up maybe for the first time, having their first sexual encounters, which sometimes will not be planned. Maybe they happen as a result of spiking. They went to a party and then their drink was spiked. There was alcohol in it. They got drunk and then they lost control, and then they ended up doing something that they had not planned to. And sometimes it's even date rape, like an older a partner can take advantage of their teenage girlfriend or teenage boyfriend because of the fun and the mood, and then these things happen. I was actually hearing a sad story. A parent shared with me a sad story of a teenager. So on the 31st into the 1st of 2023, he went to a party, got drunk, and he says he only woke up the following morning to discover that he was in bed. He was naked in bed with 3 girls that he'd never met before.
No way.
So this was just a party that he'd gone to, and he realizes he's with these people.
So even for guys, they're also being taken advantage of.
Yeah, it happens both ways. It's only that for guys sometimes it's difficult to even accept, and it's difficult also to share, because even for the guy it will take a bit of time to process and to actually accept that this is what has happened to me, and then later on to open up. That's even harder to do. And then I'll also give an example. The other thing that teenagers normally end up doing as a result of the festive season: speeding, stealing cars from home, and then speeding, which may result in accidents,
Because a number of cases that I've come across of teenagers and that's not license.
And now they're trying to rush back home.
And the most unfortunate thing, I think I know of 3 different cases over the years. It's sad.
So sad. Yeah. You've just reminded me of a story about 3 girls. So there was a time, I think 3 years ago, when Nasty C, I think that was the first time that he would come to see him for a show. So it was during the school term. So there were these 3 girls at a boarding school. They heard about it and they decided they would come for it. So one of the boyfriends of the boyfriend of one of the girls went to the boarding school. I won't mention the name of the school, but out of Harare, went to the boarding school, got the girls. Vanavane, their own ways of getting passes and going out of the school. So they went out of the school, came for the show. I think it happened on a Saturday or Sunday, I don't remember. And then on their way back to school, they had a major breakdown when they just come out of Harare, and it was at night. And now, so I knew one of the girls. She'd come for one of my sessions before, so she now calls and says, "This is what has happened. What do I do?" So it was a moment when they were doing something that they were not supposed to be doing in the first place, but now they are in trouble. And kuti achirengedza kuudza my parents, it's a problem because it's at night. They're in Harare, and now she didn't know what to do. So these are some of the things that may happen to teens. And it's important for us to then understand why such things happen, because when we understand why they happen, we can actually help teens to manage that, and even to prevent some of those things from happening. So the first thing that we need to understand is that teenagers are at a developmental stage where their ability to discipline and control their impulses is limited. There's a part of the brain that's responsible for executive functions, for understanding consequences even before taking actions. That's known as the prefrontal cortex. That part of the brain only fully develops to that of an adult in your 20s. So when you are a teenager, it hasn't fully developed. And for that reason, as a teenager, you do not have that ability to measure consequences and to make decisions based on consequences and not just based on emotions. So that in itself makes teenagers very vulnerable. So it's important to just help them.
So they act impulsively.
Yeah, they act impulsively.
And then that's it.
You've probably talked to a teenager, something has happened, and they'll tell you that, well, I didn't even know what I was thinking. And there's truth to it. It's not just a statement to try and cover up. Most of the times they actually don't understand what was happening. It was just a moment of adrenaline, and then they did that thing. And also sometimes, parents would say, but we're wondering what really went wrong, what happened. So it happens because of that developmental stage that they're still at. You may have a son who's so calm, so reserved. You've lived with him for the past 16 years, 17 years, and then just this one day you hear that he punched someone, he got involved in a fight, and you're wondering what happened. It is that moment. And what happens is that teenagers peak at puberty at different ages. So for some, by 13, that's the time that they peak in puberty, and that's the time where they are most hormonal, where they're very emotional. Or for some, they peak at 15 or at 16. So it's important to understand that. And when they've gotten to that stage, then there are places that you need to try and help them avoid, explaining to them that things could happen and could go out of hand in those in those places. And then there's also peer pressure. It's another reason why sometimes teenagers end up acting out of character. So the peer pressure is so intense and real. There's peer pressure from within and peer pressure from without, where they're actually being pressed by friends. Maybe in their clique, everyone is saying we need to attend this party, we need to go there, and there's a lot of push, a lot of messages coming to them, and they might end up giving in to that pressure. Or sometimes just pressure from inside, where there's this fear of missing out. They want to be like everyone else. And to
FOMO is real, right?
Yeah, it's very real. And to better understand that, even as adults, one of the major reasons for January disease is peer pressure. People don't plan for fun, and then it's in December. Next door, and then they're like, oh no, I can't have my kids just home. Let's just use this money for fees, and then we'll see what to do next year. So that if you as an adult can actually be affected by peer pressure to that extent of making such a decision, imagine your teenager. They can also be affected by peer pressure and ending up doing things that are out of character. And then the other thing is that there is media pressure. So teenagers are under a lot of media pressure. Sometimes we underestimate the ability of the media to shape our perspectives. But I'll just give an example. Sometimes you hear people talking about maybe Nigerians, or talking about Americans and saying, oh, Nigerians do this or do that. There's a lot of this in Nigeria. There's a lot of this in America. And you would think these people have been to America or Nigeria, or they have friends who are, or they have relatives who are in Nigeria or America. Maybe they have none. They're speaking from the movies that they've watched. They're speaking from the music, what they've seen on media, and their perspective has been shaped by the media. So the same way as adults, sometimes our perspectives are shaped by what we see on the internet and on TV. Teenagers are also perspectives are also shaped by what they are exposed to. I remember one of those days we'd gone out for an outing. I'd gone out for an outing with kids from church. So we'd gone for swimming, and this is the first time that I'll take this group of kids for swimming. So one of them said, I need no swim, I know I can. So I just took it, maybe he does, he's learned from school. So what does he do? He jumps to the deep end. straight to the deep end. And before we knew it, he was actually drowning. Just that we were prepared. We always have like a lifeguard on.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but what happened? Talking to him like after this whole incident, he had watched like a lot of movies and seen all this. So he thought because of what he had seen,
It
he
looked
could do
easy.
it. Yeah, it looked easy. He just thought.
So
well,
in
I
his
could
head,
just-
he assumed he could.
yeah, he just thought I can do it. So that's what happens. Like when you see like a lot of things, sometimes your mind then can't differentiate fiction from reality. You think you end up believing what you've just been exposed to. And then the other thing, the reason why teens end up acting impulsively like that is just ignorance and a lack of experience. So some mistakes are like genuine. I remember a friend of mine telling me of a story. So he had gone with his other friend to this wedding. Sakayaitirwa mo boat, those like big boats, like I think it was in Vic Falls. So he says that the other friend saw a lot of people ordering champagne and all because it was that type of a wedding where you could just order like whatever you wanted. So he also started ordering. He didn't even know that this is alcohol. He's just like ordering and all. And then afterwards. So sometimes that's what actually happens to teens, and it's important to understand all of these reasons.
And sometimes they're embarrassed to ask.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you show your lack of knowing.
And
Kusaziveko
when you yeah.
no, they don't have to know that skuziva. Sakanongo play along.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And yet you actually are ignorant. So given all that, what can we do to help teenagers? Number one, when a teenager acts in a way that is inconsistent with their character, you actually know your child, you know your teen, they wouldn't do this, but then this thing happens to them. They actually deserve mercy. And you need to sit them down and talk to them and understand what has led to that. You know, pane zvaitika kudhara, I don't know if it's still happening. Zvaingonzikana mwana akanonoka kudzoka. Dzokera kwaunga uri ikoko. And there is no time to even ask and try to find out what was happened or what was happening or what has happened. Because sometimes people were actually forced to then go to somebody they were with and ended up being raped. The first time when they came, nothing had happened, but now they've been forced to go back to that house. Now something worse actually happens. So if it's the first time that this thing has happened, it's important to give them a chance and give them a space to actually explain themselves. And also, it's
pasina precedence.
Yeah, pasina
Kuti mwana ngononoka
precedence. This is
kuya
just-
that
yeah.
day. Kuti it's not right kuti muti dzokera kwaunga uri. You can also come on our WhatsApp platform and tell us, is that safe? Your thoughts on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Then the other thing, it's important to rush and protect them from natural consequences. So you know that there are natural consequences, then there are artificial consequences. So natural consequences are consequences that happen as a direct result of what somebody has done. So for example, you've discovered that your child has had a sexual encounter, maybe anga farisa or something happened. It's important to rush them maybe to a rape clinic, because if they're underage, they obviously couldn't consent. You rush them there, they get counseling, they get protection from STDs and all of that. If you are to then give consequences, you can give artificial consequences later, because artificial consequences are consequences that you as a person actually create to try and correct the behavior. So after that, you can then sit down and say, okay, because you've done this, you're going to be grounded for 2 weeks, or I'm taking your phone, or I'm taking those privileges because you've done this. You're giving this artificial consequences, because the artificial ones are good because they are just to correct them. But then the natural ones, for example, if you're too late to take them to a hospital, just the example I've given, maybe you lose that opportunity to protect them from STDs. Or maybe they get pregnant or something like that, and they're still underage. So it's important when something happens to rush and protect them from natural consequences. Accident, you have to rush and take them to the hospital. If you will then punish them, it has to be like at a later stage. But sometimes, we let emotions overwhelm us, and then in that moment of emotion, we take actions, and then we forget to protect them from this other natural consequences I've talked about. And then by the time we get back to our senses and try to help, it may actually be too late. So it's important to learn to hold your emotions, hold your emotions, try and understand what has really happened. After that, you can then give well thought out, effective consequences. I'll just give one example if I still have time. So what happened was that towards Christmas, I was taking youth to church for an outing. So I told them to come at a particular time. And then only a few managed to make it on time. And then what I decided to do was to take those that came on time to a breakfast. And then we started sending pictures to the group, just to show the others that, oh, we are here. Next time, make sure you are on time so that you can also enjoy this. So that was like a consequence that was artificial that I created.
Okay. Coach Tafadzo, thank you so much for your time. Very, very helpful information as always. How can